On a bitterly cold winter night, wind howled mercilessly through towering pines, carrying flakes of snow that swirled in chaotic patterns. Inside his isolated log cabin, Ethan pulled his blanket tighter, listening to the comforting crackle of burning logs. Suddenly, the tranquility shattered, a faint scratching sound echoed from the porch, gentle yet persistent. Heart pounding, Ethan rose cautiously, peering through the frosted window pane into the darkness. There, illuminated by the pale moonlight, stood two wolves. Their once powerful frames were thin, fur matted with ice, eyes shimmering with desperation rather than menace. One wolf pawed weakly at the door, while the other gazed pleadingly into Ethan's stunned face. Wild predators begging to enter a human shelter was unimaginable, defying every instinct he'd known living here. His breath fogged against the chilled glass as a surge of confusion filled his mind. What unimaginable circumstance could drive creatures of the wilderness to seek sanctuary from man? Ethan's hand trembled, frozen in hesitation above the latch. In this moment, curiosity warred fiercely with caution. Why would these majestic, wild beasts choose his warmth and safety over the vast freedom of their natural world? The answer, he realized with a chill down his spine, could change his life forever. Ethan Harper was a rugged, solitary woodsman whose entire world revolved around his remote log cabin, nestled deep within the frozen expanse of Alaska's unforgiving wilderness. In his late 40s, Ethan bore the physical marks of a life spent braving nature's elements. His broad shoulders carried the strength of someone who regularly split logs and shoveled heavy snow, while his weathered face reflected the countless winters endured alone. A neatly trimmed beard flecked with gray-framed eyes that seemed perpetually alert, always scanning for signs of danger or opportunity in his isolated existence. Having grown up in this very region, Ethan knew every twist of the icy trails, every subtle whisper of the forest. He had learned early on how to read the sky for incoming storms, spot tracks of passing wildlife, and recognize when the wilderness was safe or dangerously unpredictable. Survival here was more than a skill, it was second nature. Yet, beneath his hardened exterior was a quiet, gentle soul that revealed itself most often in small acts of compassion, like rescuing injured wildlife or carefully tending the fragile plants in his modest greenhouse. Ethan's days were structured around a familiar, comforting routine. Rising before dawn, he began by stoking the fire and brewing coffee strong enough to ward off the bitter chill of the morning air. After bundling up in layers of heavy clothing, he would step out into the biting wind to gather firewood, check traps for food, and ensure the cabin remained secure against nature's relentless threats. Evenings, however, were his favorite time, when the day's hard work ended and he could sit quietly beside the fireplace, reading from his collection of worn novels and listening to the stormy symphony of the forest outside. Despite choosing this solitary existence, Ethan often felt a subtle but persistent loneliness, particularly during the long, dark winters when days passed without seeing another human face. He had willingly traded crowded city streets for serene solitude years ago, seeking peace and purpose in the wilderness. Yet, at times, a pang of longing would rise within him, a quiet yearning for companionship, conversation, or simply a shared moment to ease the silence. Tonight, however, as Ethan stood frozen in indecision, confronted by two desperate wolves begging entry, he sensed clearly that his quiet routine and careful solitude were about to unravel, pulling him into an extraordinary encounter that challenged every instinct he had ever trusted. The wolves stood trembling in the frigid darkness, illuminated only by the dim, golden glow spilling through Ethan's cabin window. At first glance, they seemed spectral, ghostly shapes against the drifting snow, their breath clouding in slow, misty puffs. But as Ethan peered closer, heart thudding with caution, he realized the creatures were in terrible condition. Their once majestic frames were emaciated, ribs jutting starkly beneath matted, ice-clumped fur. The smaller wolf, a female, limped noticeably, her rear leg dragging slightly as she shifted her weight. Their eyes, deep, amber, and hauntingly intelligent, fixed urgently upon Ethan's face, imploring rather than threatening. An internal war erupted within Ethan's chest. Growing up in this harsh landscape, he'd been taught the unforgiving rule of survival: wolves were predators, unpredictable and dangerous. To invite wild beasts into one's home was unthinkable, even reckless. Yet, as he stood face to face with these starving, desperate creatures, Ethan felt a deeper emotion stir within him, tugging painfully at his heartstrings. His well-honed survival instincts clashed violently with an overwhelming surge of compassion. How could he deny shelter to beings clearly so vulnerable, so deeply in need? Slowly, cautiously, Ethan moved to the cabin door, his hand hovering uncertainly above the latch. The wolves watched his every movement, their bodies tense yet pleading. The smaller wolf let out a faint whine, a sound filled with heartbreaking vulnerability. Ethan paused, breath hitching in his throat. The risks were clear, one wrong move could turn his safe haven into chaos. Yet, the thought of turning away, closing the door on their silent plea, felt equally impossible. Finally, with a heavy sigh, Ethan made his choice. He opened the door just enough to allow passage, stepping back quickly and gripping his flashlight firmly, ready for any hint of aggression. His heart pounded wildly in anticipation. For a tense, suspended moment, nothing happened. The wolves merely watched him, eyes wide with cautious uncertainty. Then, the larger wolf took a hesitant step forward, lowering its head submissively, moving slowly into the warmth of the cabin. The injured female followed carefully, limping across the threshold with evident pain, yet seemingly driven by the promise of refuge. Once inside, the wolves paused, shuddering visibly as the warmth of Ethan's cabin enveloped their weary bodies. Ethan quickly but calmly closed the door, sealing out the bitter cold. His chest loosened slightly with relief. He had taken a gamble, and it appeared to be the right choice. Still gripping the flashlight tightly, he carefully watched their movements. The wolves sniffed cautiously, noses low to the wooden floor, taking in the unfamiliar sense of human habitation. Ethan felt his tension gradually giving way to profound empathy as he watched the smaller wolf painfully settle beside the fireplace, her injured leg stretched awkwardly. Compassion surged strongly within him. Whatever had driven these wild creatures to forsake their instinctive fear of humans must have been truly dire, and Ethan knew instinctively that his life would now be intertwined with theirs, shaped by this strange, extraordinary bond born from a single, compassionate choice. Once safely inside, the wolves remained motionless near the cabin's entrance, ears perked forward, noses quivering as they cautiously sniffed the unfamiliar surroundings. The dim glow from the fireplace danced along their matted, frosted fur, highlighting their gaunt figures more starkly now. Ethan observed quietly from a safe distance, his heart still racing from the magnitude of his decision, knowing that in opening his door he had willingly invited uncertainty into his peaceful life. Slowly, with tentative curiosity, the larger wolf took cautious steps deeper into the room, his paws making faint clicking sounds against the old wooden floorboards. Each movement appeared calculated, as though aware of the fragile trust hanging delicately between predator and human. His wide, intelligent eyes never fully left Ethan's figure, continuously gauging any potential threat. Behind him, the smaller wolf moved even more hesitantly, limping heavily with each awkward step. Ethan's heart twisted painfully at her struggle. Clearly her injury was significant, possibly infected or frostbitten. As the wolves explored, Ethan closely monitored their every motion, observing their timid examination of each object they encountered. The larger wolf paused beside Ethan's warm rocking chair, sniffing curiously at the thick woolen blanket draped across its arm. He gave a low, cautious whine, as if trying to communicate his approval of the warmth within this unusual den. The smaller wolf lingered closer to the fireplace, drawn instinctively to its comforting heat. She settled gently, emitting soft, heartbreaking whimpers each time she adjusted her injured leg. Anxiety tugged persistently at Ethan's thoughts as he continued to watch the pair. Despite their apparent gentleness, these were still wild predators, unpredictable and driven by instincts he could not fully anticipate. Yet, the undeniable vulnerability displayed by these creatures gradually softened his apprehension. Their physical frailty seemed genuine, their desperation too poignant to ignore. Ethan wondered what might have forced them to cast aside generations of cautious survival instincts in favor of trusting a human, a creature they likely associated with danger. Ethan moved slowly toward the fireplace, careful not to alarm them. The wolves immediately stiffened, eyes alert, watching his approach with tense uncertainty. Ethan stopped, gently lowering himself onto the floor a safe distance away, communicating through his calm movements that he meant no harm. After a moment of tense observation, the larger wolf cautiously resumed his exploration, gradually seeming to accept Ethan's presence as non-threatening. The smaller wolf, her amber eyes weary with exhaustion and pain, simply watched Ethan warily from her spot near the fire, clearly too fatigued and weak to attempt fleeing even if she'd wished to. Compassion surged through Ethan, drowning out lingering fear. His cautious optimism strengthened, perhaps coexistence, even temporary, was possible. Carefully, he rose to his feet again, this time retrieving fresh blankets from a nearby shelf and slowly placing them near the fireplace. The larger wolf observed intently, stepping back slightly but making no aggressive move. Ethan gently gestured toward the blankets, offering them softly as an invitation. After a moment's pause, the injured wolf moved carefully onto the soft bedding, emitting a quiet sigh of relief as warmth cushioned her sore body. Watching this delicate display of acceptance, Ethan felt an unexpected tenderness swell within him. He understood clearly now, these wolves, despite their formidable wild nature, had chosen to risk their survival by trusting him. Their shared vulnerability was forging a quiet, extraordinary connection. Ethan knew this fragile bond remained unpredictable, yet he could not deny its profound effect upon his heart. Whatever uncertainties lay ahead, he resolved quietly to meet them with compassion, embracing the rare, delicate trust now unfolding inside his warm, humble cabin. With the wolves cautiously settled by the warmth of the fire, Ethan moved quietly to the kitchen corner of his cabin, aware that each movement he made was closely observed by two pairs of wary, yet hopeful eyes. His mind raced with uncertainty. Feeding wild predators was inherently risky, yet it seemed impossible to deny their clear, painful hunger. Carefully, he selected a few cuts of fresh meat, portions he'd intended for his own meals, and set them gently on a worn ceramic plate. He hesitated briefly, then added extra, reasoning their need was far greater than his own at this moment. Slowly, deliberately, Ethan returned to where the wolves lay waiting, their gazes alert yet somehow calm. Kneeling carefully, he placed the plate several feet in front of them, sliding it gently closer with an outstretched hand. His heart fluttered nervously, he knew this act held significant risk. Yet, as the wolves cautiously sniffed the air, their expressions remained gentle, devoid of aggression. The larger wolf stepped forward first, ears pinned back respectfully as he took the meat, chewing quietly. The injured wolf hesitated only briefly before joining in, her appetite clearly overcoming her pain. Ethan's tense shoulders eased as he watched them eat hungrily yet gently, displaying surprising delicacy for such powerful animals. Witnessing their quiet gratitude filled him with an unexpected warmth, a tender emotion that seemed to flow naturally from the unusual trust blooming between them. His gaze settled more intently on the injured wolf. Her hind leg was swollen and inflamed, with visible cuts likely exacerbated by exposure to extreme cold. Ethan felt an overwhelming urge to help her. Rising slowly again, he fetched his basic first aid kit, its contents simple but sufficient: clean bandages, antiseptic ointment, and gauze. Approaching cautiously, he knelt beside her, speaking softly in low, soothing tones. "You're okay now," he murmured gently, heart pounding in nervous anticipation. The wolf stiffened slightly, eyeing him warily, but remained still, seemingly sensing his intent was kind. Ethan reached carefully, applying antiseptic to a clean cloth, gently dabbing at her injured limb. She flinched, emitting a faint growl of pain, but made no attempt to bite or flee. The larger wolf moved closer, watching closely but making no threatening gestures, as though silently granting Ethan permission to care for his companion. With tender precision, Ethan wrapped her wound carefully, securing the gauze and ensuring the bandage provided comfort without causing additional discomfort. As he finished, the injured wolf exhaled deeply, eyes half closing in relief. Ethan felt his own breath release, amazed at the depth of trust forming within these precious moments. The room settled into a serene quiet, punctuated only by the comforting sounds of crackling logs and the wolves' steady breathing. Ethan retreated slightly, seating himself near the fire, allowing a respectful distance while remaining within view. Soon, the wolves edged closer, moving cautiously yet deliberately to rest nearer to Ethan. Their proximity felt intentional, a conscious acceptance of his presence. The larger wolf curled protectively around his injured companion, yet his posture remained relaxed, head resting comfortably upon folded paws, eyes gently blinking as exhaustion took hold. Watching them sleep, Ethan marveled silently at the extraordinary scene unfolding in his humble cabin. The gentle rise and fall of their breathing soothed him deeply, filling him with quiet joy and wonder. The cautious tension had transformed, giving way to a profound sense of connection and mutual trust. In these extraordinary moments, Ethan felt a powerful sense of gratitude. These wolves had entered his life unexpectedly, bringing both risk and tenderness. And now, despite the uncertainty ahead, Ethan was quietly certain of one thing: his heart would never again see wolves as mere predators, but as companions, bonded by shared kindness. As dawn broke, casting pale streaks of soft gray across the snow-draped landscape outside, Ethan was jolted awake by an unexpected sound. Beside the glowing embers of the fireplace, the wolves were suddenly alert, ears perked sharply forward, their eyes locked anxiously on the cabin door. A low, deep growl rumbled from the larger wolf's throat, causing Ethan's heart to surge with sudden apprehension. "What is it?" he whispered instinctively, easing quietly from his chair. The wolves ignored him entirely, their bodies rigid, muscles taut beneath their fur. Ethan moved carefully to the window, pressing his face against the frosted glass and peering cautiously outside. His breath caught sharply. In the fresh snow blanketing his yard, clear tracks appeared, human footprints leading around the side of the cabin toward the tree line beyond. A surge of tension tightened Ethan's chest. Who would be here, in this remote, inhospitable place, especially at this early hour? Ethan felt certain it wasn't casual hikers or ordinary visitors. The nearest town was miles away, and few ventured this far into the wilderness willingly, particularly after a fierce winter storm. The larger wolf growled again, deeper this time, eyes never leaving the door. Ethan reached instinctively for his heavy coat and gloves, slipping quietly into his boots. He paused, pulse hammering in his throat, conflicted by caution and an urgent need for answers. Were these footprints merely coincidence, someone lost or stranded? Or could they belong to someone deliberately searching for the wolves now sheltered within his home? Taking a deep breath, Ethan opened the door carefully, just enough to step outside. The biting morning air stung his face sharply as he moved toward the mysterious tracks. Kneeling in the snow, he examined them closely. They were fresh, deeply imprinted, suggesting purposeful movement. As he followed them cautiously around the corner of the cabin, his sense of unease intensified. The tracks paused briefly near his windows, as though someone had been observing from outside, watching, perhaps, as he'd tended to the wolves. His heart raced faster. Was this unknown figure a hunter? A tracker intent on harm, or perhaps a wildlife officer investigating? He scanned the surrounding forest intently, searching for movement among the dark, snow-covered pines. The stillness felt unnatural, oppressive, as though the entire wilderness were holding its breath alongside him. Suddenly, something shifted near the distant tree line, a shadow slipping quickly between tall trunks. Ethan squinted, trying desperately to identify the figure, but it vanished swiftly, leaving only silence and lingering suspicion. The hairs rose sharply on the back of Ethan's neck, every instinct warning him of potential danger. Back inside, the wolves had grown quiet again, though their posture remained wary, uneasy. Ethan carefully locked the cabin door behind him, his hands trembling slightly. 1,000 questions crowded his mind. Who had discovered their secret sanctuary? And what did they intend to do? Ethan knew with a sinking certainty that the peace he'd briefly enjoyed was now shattered. Whoever was lurking nearby had seen something, and their presence threatened not only his fragile bond with the wolves, but perhaps even their very survival. Minutes after Ethan secured the cabin door, a sharp knock echoed through the quiet, causing both wolves to stiffen again, ears flattened warily. Heart racing, Ethan moved cautiously to the window, peering outside once more. Standing at a careful distance was a woman bundled tightly in heavy winter gear, snow goggles pulled down around her neck, her hands clearly visible in a gesture of openness and peace. Despite her non-threatening posture, Ethan felt wary. Had this stranger been watching them? Was she connected to the mysterious tracks he discovered? Uncertain, Ethan opened the door slowly, stepping onto the porch and blocking entry to the cabin. "Who are you? And why are you here?" he demanded cautiously, his voice firm but controlled. The woman raised her gloved hands higher, indicating she meant no harm. "My name's Maya Collins, I'm a wildlife researcher with the North Ridge Conservation Center," she explained calmly, her breath visible in the frigid morning air. "I've been tracking 2 wolves in this region for days, and their trail led me here." Ethan hesitated, still cautious but intrigued. Her eyes were earnest, genuine, her manner professional yet compassionate. Could she be telling the truth? "These wolves," Ethan began carefully, choosing his words slowly, "they came to me. They were injured, desperate, starving. I couldn't just leave them outside." Maya's expression softened with clear relief. "That makes sense. They're part of a monitored pack from further north. We've been studying them closely, tracking their movements to ensure their survival. But several days ago, during a violent blizzard, these 2 wolves were separated from their pack, driven southward by hunters." "Hunters?" Ethan asked sharply, anxiety tightening his voice. "Yes," Maya confirmed grimly. "Illegal hunting activity has risen sharply in recent weeks. These wolves aren't aggressive, but they're vulnerable and scared. The pack scattered in panic, and these 2 have been running for their lives ever since." Ethan's chest loosened slightly, the pieces falling into place. Maya's story matched the desperate state of the wolves perfectly. Gradually, his apprehension faded into cautious relief. This woman clearly intended no harm, her presence was actually a lifeline for the wolves now sheltering in his home. Sensing his uncertainty fading, Maya took a careful step forward, voice gentle yet firm. "May I see them? I'd like to assess their injuries and condition, if that's all right." Ethan nodded slowly, opening the cabin door wider and motioning her inside. "They're wary, be careful." Inside, Maya moved with practiced gentleness, immediately lowering herself to appear smaller, less threatening. The wolves watched closely, tense at first, but visibly relaxing as she spoke to them softly, her voice calm and reassuring. Her expert approach confirmed her experience. It became clear she knew exactly how to earn their cautious trust. Carefully examining the injured wolf's bandaged leg, Maya nodded approvingly. "You've done well. This treatment likely saved her life. She needs professional care, though. Infection risks are high, and this environment is challenging for recovery." Ethan felt a quiet pride at her words, relieved yet unsettled at the thought of relinquishing the wolves' care. "What happens now?" he asked softly, already sensing the answer. Maya met his gaze sympathetically. "With your help, we can transport them to our center. Once healed, they'll be safely reunited with their pack in protected territory. They'll have a chance to live freely again." Ethan nodded slowly, emotions swirling. Her words felt bittersweet but reassuring. Meeting Maya had brought clarity and hope, yet he knew the bond forged between himself and the wolves would remain with him forever. In Maya's presence, Ethan felt a deep sense of relief and gratitude. With newfound trust building, he understood clearly now, their paths had crossed for a reason, to save these wolves, together. As evening approached, dark storm clouds quickly gathered on the horizon, casting an ominous shadow across the wilderness. Ethan's stomach tightened with dread. He'd seen enough Alaskan storms to recognize the fierce intensity brewing behind the dense, steel-gray skies. Maya checked her handheld weather radio, expression grave as the emergency alert crackled through. "We've got a severe blizzard coming," Maya announced urgently, eyes locking onto Ethan's. "The roads will be impassable, visibility 0. We're stuck here until it clears." Ethan nodded grimly, already moving swiftly into action. Outside, the wind began to howl, snowflakes spiraling furiously, battering the cabin walls. Inside, the wolves shifted uneasily, sensing the rising threat. The larger wolf nudged his injured companion protectively, emitting low, reassuring whines. "We need to secure everything," Ethan said firmly, grabbing heavy wooden planks stacked in the corner. Maya quickly joined him, working as a seamless team as they reinforced the windows and secured loose doors against the violent gusts rattling the cabin. Each howl of the wind seemed louder than the last, pushing furiously against the sturdy logs that had sheltered Ethan through countless storms before. The wolves watched anxiously from their resting place, alert to every movement. Their amber eyes widened whenever a gust shook the cabin violently, instinctively aware of the imminent danger. Ethan felt a growing urgency as he noticed frost creeping into the cabin, evidence that the bitter cold was already penetrating their defenses. They needed warmth, quickly. "The fire," Maya urged, hurrying to stoke the hearth vigorously. Ethan fed fresh logs into the flames, sending sparks spiraling upward. The warmth spread slowly, battling stubbornly against the invading chill. Maya then arranged blankets around the wolves, ensuring they remained protected from the intensifying cold. Suddenly, a violent crack echoed sharply outside, followed by the deafening crash of a massive branch striking the cabin roof. Ethan's heart leaped into his throat as the entire structure shuddered beneath the impact. Maya gasped sharply, her eyes wide with fear. The wolves instantly sprang to their feet, bodies rigid with alarm. Ethan quickly assessed the damage, his voice tight with urgency. "We need to reinforce the roof supports, or the cabin won't hold." Maya nodded, determination stealing her expression. Together, fighting the relentless wind, they hammered sturdy braces beneath the weakened rafters, their hands numb and trembling from the bitter cold that seeped into the cabin with each powerful gust. Each violent tremor of the structure deepened Ethan's anxiety. One mistake could mean disaster. Amidst the chaos, the wolves watched intently, their eyes fixed on Ethan and Maya's desperate efforts. Unexpectedly, the larger wolf stepped forward, placing himself protectively between Maya and the shaking wall. His stance was firm, unwavering, a clear sign of trust and solidarity. Ethan's heart swelled with emotion at witnessing such profound loyalty from a creature that had every reason to fear humans. Finally, after what felt like hours of relentless struggle, the cabin seemed stabilized enough to withstand the storm's fury. Ethan and Maya retreated toward the fire, collapsing onto the floor in exhaustion. Maya shivered visibly, pulling her coat tightly around her shoulders. Suddenly, the smaller, injured wolf limped carefully toward Maya, gently nudging her shoulder with a cold nose. Maya's breath caught in surprise and gratitude, tears welling in her eyes as she tentatively reached out, softly stroking the wolf's matted fur. "You're safe now," she whispered gently, her voice filled with wonder and relief. Nearby, Ethan met the steady, intelligent gaze of the larger wolf, who had curled up protectively nearby. Their silent exchange communicated volumes: respect, trust, and mutual gratitude forged through shared adversity. Ethan felt a surge of emotion swell within him, profoundly moved by this extraordinary bond between human and beast. As the storm continued to rage, battering fiercely at the walls, the wolves remained close, their presence deeply comforting. Ethan, Maya, and the wolves formed a quiet circle of warmth and companionship, a sanctuary of trust amidst the violent chaos outside. In this extraordinary moment, Ethan felt a profound clarity. Despite the severity of their circumstances, their shared vulnerability had created an unbreakable bond. He glanced at Maya, seeing his own quiet amazement reflected in her eyes. They had faced danger together, protected one another, and the wolves had shown a loyalty and gentleness Ethan would never forget. As the blizzard roared on, Ethan felt certain that whatever lay ahead, none of them would face it alone. As the relentless storm gradually subsided, leaving behind a silent landscape cloaked in heavy snow, Ethan felt a profound shift within himself. His attachment to the wolves had grown deeply personal, a bond forged through mutual trust and survival. Watching them rest near the warmth of the fire, their breathing slow and calm, Ethan felt an ache of quiet tenderness in his chest, a protective affection he'd never anticipated. The injured wolf lifted her head slightly, meeting Ethan's gaze with gentle curiosity, and he felt the warmth of her amber eyes seep deeply into his soul. The larger wolf remained close by, ever watchful yet relaxed, occasionally resting his chin reassuringly across his companion's back. Each subtle gesture, each quiet moment, reinforced Ethan's emotional connection to them, intensifying his desire to keep them safe from harm. Sitting across from him, Maya quietly observed Ethan's thoughtful expression, sensing his internal conflict. Her voice softened gently as she spoke, breaking the comforting silence. "They're remarkable animals," Maya began cautiously, her tone compassionate yet firm. But you know we can't keep them here forever. There are places out there, in the wild, with their pack. Ethan's throat tightened painfully at her words. Rationally, he understood Maya's logic. Wolves belonged in the wilderness, free and unbound. Yet, emotionally, he struggled deeply. How could he simply release these vulnerable creatures, knowing firsthand the dangers they faced outside his door? Memories of their desperation, their pleading eyes at his doorstep, lingered heavily in his heart. He hesitated, struggling to voice the turmoil within him. I know you're right, Maya. But after all we've been through, letting them go feels impossible. It's like sending them back into danger. Maya's expression softened further, her empathy clear. I understand. It's natural to feel that way, especially after everything. But these wolves won't truly thrive unless they're free. They're strong, resilient creatures. We can help ensure they have the best chance possible, but ultimately they deserve the freedom of their natural home. Ethan sighed deeply, his eyes drifting back toward the wolves resting quietly. His mind raced with conflicting emotions, compassion and fear tangled together, each fighting for dominance. He knew Maya's words were true, yet the thought of losing their companionship stung deeply, leaving an emptiness he dreaded. What if something happens? Ethan asked softly, voicing the fear that haunted him most. After what they've been through, sending them away feels like abandoning them. Maya moved closer, placing a gentle, reassuring hand on Ethan's shoulder. It's not abandonment, it's giving them back the lives they were meant to have. We'll monitor them closely, ensuring their safety. You'll always be part of their journey, Ethan. They'll remember this place, and they'll remember you. Ethan closed his eyes, allowing Maya's reassurance to ease some of the ache within him. Deep down, he knew that releasing them was an act of profound kindness, yet he couldn't help mourning the loss of their quiet presence beside him. As evening approached once more, Ethan sat quietly by the fire, listening to the soft breathing of his wolf companions. He felt gratitude mingled with melancholy, knowing their paths must soon diverge, yet forever grateful that fate had briefly brought them together. Just as the storm's fury began to wane, a faint, mournful howl pierced the eerie stillness outside the cabin. Ethan froze, his heart pounding as the sound cut through the air, a desperate, lonely cry that echoed against the snow-laden trees. The two wolves inside the cabin immediately perked up, their ears twitching, eyes wide with sudden alertness. The larger wolf stood up, head tilted toward the door, his body tense with recognition and concern. Maya looked at Ethan, her expression a mix of concern and determination. That doesn't sound like a threat, she whispered. It sounds like someone looking for them. Without a word, Ethan grabbed his coat and flashlight, pulling the door open just enough to peer outside. The cold air bit sharply at his face, but he didn't hesitate, stepping out cautiously into the snow. The wolves whined behind him, pawing at the floor as if begging to follow. Maya quickly joined him, adjusting her own coat. If it's part of their pack, we need to find it before the cold takes its toll, she urged. They moved carefully through the fresh drifts, guided by another low, agonized howl. As they rounded the side of the cabin, Ethan's flashlight caught movement, a dark shape dragging itself through the snow. His heart sank as he focused the beam, revealing another wolf, this one even more emaciated than the others, its coat caked with ice and blood. It moved with painful, halting steps, each breath visible in the freezing air. Oh no, Maya whispered, immediately recognizing the gravity of the situation. It's injured, badly. Ethan approached slowly, speaking softly, trying to convey calm despite the urgency burning within him. The wolf looked up, eyes reflecting a mixture of fear and exhaustion. It staggered, collapsing into the snow, whimpering softly as it struggled to rise again. Maya knelt beside the fallen wolf, examining it carefully without making sudden movements. It's dehydrated, weak, and I think its leg is broken, she murmured. Ethan felt his stomach twist with empathy. This poor creature had likely been searching for its family for days, driven by instinct and desperation. Without intervention, it wouldn't survive the night. We have to get it inside, now, Ethan urged, already removing his coat to gently wrap the wolf. He lifted it carefully, cradling the fragile body against his chest as Maya helped support its hind legs. The wolf barely resisted, too weak to protest, but its wide, pleading eyes remained fixed on Ethan, as if silently begging for help. As they moved back toward the cabin, the injured wolf let out a soft, relieved whine, sensing the proximity of its companions. The other two wolves greeted their pack-mate with soft whines and gentle nudges as Ethan carefully set the injured wolf down on the blankets by the fire. Emotion swelled within Ethan, a mix of profound sadness and fierce resolve. He knew this fragile family had endured unimaginable hardship, and now, with the storm closing in again, their survival depended on his unwavering commitment to protect them. As Ethan carefully laid the injured wolf down on the soft blankets near the fire, the other two wolves approached cautiously, their eyes wide with recognition. The larger wolf immediately pressed his nose against the newcomer's face, whining softly as he nudged the frail body, while the injured female sniffed the newcomer gently, emitting low, comforting whimpers.